I think it's fair to say that safety and public security is a broad topic. Counterfeiting, where would that fit in? Well, we know criminals want to counterfeit banknotes to make money, but foreign governments have been interested in flooding other countries with fake currency in order to destabilize the economy. You can also destabilize the economy if you hack into the stock exchange, or you can shut down the economy if you hack into the electricity grid. For this Throwback Thursday, let's take a look at old-fashioned counterfeiting. Hello, I'm Alan Bonner. Welcome to At Issue. Counterfeiting is one of the oldest crimes on record. Perpetrators have ranged from school students to artisans to merchants and organized criminals. Among all forms of fraud, the crime of counterfeiting has always been treated seriously. Kings and queens considered it an act of treason, punishable by torture, public flogging, and then hanging. In fact, Benjamin Franklin's early printed American money bore the phrase, "To counterfeit is death." And the last British citizen to be burned at the stake in 1789 was a woman named Catherine Murphy, a convicted counterfeiter. In Canada, since the 1960s, the battle against counterfeiting has been between competing technologies. Today, as governments and criminals try to outsmart and out-tech each other, our financial health may very well hang in the balance. Are bank accounts, credit cards, and personal identities secure? Is the cash in your pocket actually worth the paper it's printed on? While criminals try to illegally get easy money, are they also undermining our financial institutions and our savings? I want to start with the magnitude of the problem, which regrettably doesn't say a lot of nice things about how well we've been fighting counterfeiting in this country, and it is a Canadian Press article, so the question is going to go to you, Sergeant. Here's a quote from the Canadian Press article. "Counterfeiting has exploded in Canada, breaking historical records and making the country one of the worst in the world for the circulation of funny money." True?
I would say a few years ago that was definitely a very true statement. Today, much different story.
How would you compare us today to other countries in terms of counterfeiting?
I would say we're pretty much along the same ranks as some of the other countries that are dealing with counterfeit issues. Maybe not the best yet, but we're much closer to the standard around the world.
So you're saying we're above average?
Well, when we were in 2004, for example, we were well above average if you scored it by how bad we were. Today, we're within the group of the top 3 or 4 as far as the countries around the world that report their level of counterfeiting.
Tell me about the National Anti-Counterfeiting Bureau. That's an RCMP group?
Yes, it's a counterfeit lab we have in Ottawa, and they have various roles, but those would be counterfeit currency, counterfeit payment cards, as well as travel documents and government ID and that sort of thing.
Relatively new agency, FinTrack. What are they?
FinTrack, that's a financial tracking group. They're responsible more for following suspicious transactions of currency, movement, that sort of thing, between banks or out of the country and in the country.
I'm sure you saw this question coming. Are there too many agencies and players involved? It sounds like a lot.
Well, it is, but you have to look, I guess, at what's their specific role. We don't, in the counterfeit world, counterfeit currency world, deal so much with FinTrack. It's not so much of an issue of people moving large quantities of counterfeit overseas or around the country as it is the passing at the low level, street level, 1-2 notes at a time.
Here's an inconvenience. A couple of years ago, a Windsor, Ontario counterfeiting ring put about 63,000 fake $100 bills in circulation. Not a lot of bills, I guess everyone would agree, in the overall scheme of things. Small percentage of the number of real bills out there, but 15% of all businesses between Windsor and Montreal put signs up in their stores saying we aren't going to take $100 bills anymore. It's coinage of the realm. I'm not even sure it's legal to refuse legitimate coinage of the realm, but that's what those retailers did, causing everybody inconvenience. Can a ring like this have national implications?
Yes, certainly. We see that with various counterfeiters in the country. Is some will focus on a specific area, like what we witnessed recently here in the last couple of months in Toronto, and in 2001 with that particular note in the Windsor area. It stayed pretty much in the southern area from Windsor east to Toronto. However, we have seen some criminal organizations that have had a very good distribution network in place, and within a matter of a couple months, we've seen large quantities of their product being passed from Vancouver all the way to Halifax.
Now, I believe it's actually not lawful to carry in a bag of 5,000 pennies and say, there's my payment. That's considered vexatious, or you're just being a pain in the neck. But can a store legally refuse to take a $100 bill or a $50 bill if it's legit?
Certainly it's up to the business. If they choose not to accept that note, they can ask for another or a different form of payment.
Well, why is that? We have a legal, well, let's go to the Bank of Canada. We have a legal bill here, $100 bill. That's the one that I got out of an instant teller. They're giving 50s and 100s now. And why should a store, under what law does a store refuse to take that?
It's not a law, it's a contract. It's a legal binding contract. The way it works, legal tender is the value of the banknote, but the way it works is a legal binding contract is only in effect if two parties are in agreement. So if I decide to accept your $100 bill, and you decide to pay me with a $100 bill, it's a legal binding contract. We can make that transaction. But if my decision is not to accept the $100 bill, I have that option. And you would have to obviously give me another form of payment or go to another store. What people don't realize is when you put up a sign and you don't accept it, you're not stopping counterfeiting. A lot of people think you are. Signs go up because of float. People don't have enough money in their cash or security reasons. It's important to realize that 90% of the counterfeits last year were 20s, 10s, and 5s, not hundreds.
That nobody's really paying much attention to.
But they're taking bigger losses. That's the problem. The objective of the Bank of Canada and the RCMP is to get people trained on how to detect counterfeits so you don't have to put up a sign. You don't have to lose business. And that's the key. Training is everything when it comes to counterfeiting.
We could put all kinds of things on a credit card that would make it impossible for someone to both impersonate me and steal that card. Why isn't that being done?
Well, it's certainly options. I'm sure that all the payment card partners have been looking at, and they have to look at cost-benefit analysis. You have to look at resistance from the public on the feeling of it's a biometric. I don't want my thumbprint on a card. What happens if I lose my card and somebody has my thumbprint now? Those sorts of things. But certainly one step that's undertaken already and is starting in Canada is the addition of a chip to the card, an encrypted chip, which is much more secure than the current magstripe. Now, France started that years ago and saw great success with the reduction of credit card fraud in their country. A couple years now ago, over in Europe, they started with the EMV chip, the EuroPay MasterCard Visa partnership, and in the UK, for example, they launched theirs, and they've seen an 80% reduction in fraudulent cards.
Now, what is a chip on a card? How does that make it more secure?
The chip's basically like a mini computer. It has RAM memory, ROM memory, a processor, and everything else, and your data on it is encrypted. It's secured with a long encryption key, so that even if you were to have your card stolen or they tried to swipe the data, that data is on there and it's useless to them. It's encrypted, it means nothing, and they can't decrypt it.
Sergeant, you talked about the unsavory group of people that passed large quantities of bills. Mm-hmm. How much of counterfeiting is done by organized crime?
Well, thanks in part to the introduction of the Canadian Journey series and the difficult security features on it, the very effective security features, we've basically seen over the past few years those home hobbyists drop off. And that's focused the groups more to the people who have the time.
Very kind way of putting it, hobbyists.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the people who are printing a few for personal use on the weekend, etc. Today what we're seeing is that the groups who are really focusing on the counterfeiting in Canada have to have the resources, the money, and the time to do it, and want to put that time in to make. But then they're also, because of that, that requires large volume in order to get a return on your investment. So anytime there's a chance for high profit, organized crime's interested. Doesn't matter what the commodity is. Sometimes it's counterfeit currency, sometimes it's counterfeit payment cards, drugs, whatever. Now, when I use the term organized crime, we have to remember that it doesn't necessarily always refer to our traditional thinking of organized crime being the mafia or biker gangs, etc. Under the criminal code, organized crime really means a group of people that are organized and working towards the same criminal effort.
All right, in the 2 minutes remaining, final advice for people watching in, whether they're retailers, whether they're concerned citizens, whether they want to attack this problem so that they don't pay higher interest rates. Advice, web pages, places to go, information to be had. Manuel.
Well, for the Bank of Canada, check your banknotes. It's that simple. I mean, it takes 2 seconds to accept money. Don't look at the color, look at the features. Watermark, see-through number, interwoven thread. It only takes a few minutes to learn and a few seconds to actually use that particular touch and tilt technique. All our training material is available free through the Bank of Canada. You can order it at bankofcanada.ca. There's no point in putting up signs and using other types of machines. You need to stop the transaction and check the banknote, and you can do it in 1 or 2 seconds.
What kind of training material do you have?
We have training videos, we have literature, we have posters, we have for retailers, employee workbooks. The material has been developed. We just need to get the awareness out there. I remind people 40 years ago we didn't wear a seatbelt. Now you don't get in a car without a seatbelt. That's a behavioral change. That's what we're looking at for money. We want to change your behavior when every time you take money, you check something quickly. And you do it during the same transaction you would if you weren't checking it.
Janet, a retailer's going to have a tough decision on which product to seriously consider. Where do they go for more information?
They can reach us at our website, www.securestores.com, or call us. We're located in the Toronto area. We deal with everyone in Canada, United States. It's not a problem. It takes a few seconds with the training from the Bank of Canada, which we highly promote as well, and easy access to these machines. And they're very cheap. People think like they're high-priced items. They are not.
And final law enforcement thoughts, Carrie Patricia.
Well, it's not so much a law enforcement point. It's just me as a citizen of Canada. Protecting yourself against being a victim really comes back to each and every one of us. With counterfeit currency, if you check your own notes you're receiving back as change from a store or from your banking machine, that's going to prevent you from being a victim. Same for payment cards. Protect your information. I tell you, in my business, my wife hates going to the grocery store with me because she says I embarrass her. Is the number of people I see standing in line that use the debit card machine and will stand there, hold it back as they're punching their PIN number in, and I'll pull my badge out and say, "Hi, I'm the National Counterfeit Coordinator, and I have your PIN number. If I stole your card, I can empty your account." Just to see the look on their face. It tells them, prevention starts at home.
Good advice. Thank you. I'm Alan Bonner, and I'll see you next time on At Issue. Any views expressed here are not necessarily those of the Mackenzie Institute, its speakers, sponsors, or supporters. But the Institute is dedicated to fostering public discussion, debate, and education about security matters. Google the Mackenzie Institute to join the discussion. The Mackenzie Institute is grateful to its sponsors and supporters. Some of our short pods and long talks are a result of the support of Heathbridge Capital Management Limited, the National Post, and Dundurn Publishing.